Hello, football fans. It's the NFL Exporter checking in. February 2015. The 2014 NFL season is officially over. We are less than 2 months away from the 2015 NFL draft. So let's take a look back at the 2014 class and see what players were able to make an immediate impact in their inaugural campaigns. We're going to first start by reviewing the entire first round. The first overall selection was made by the Houston Texans. They drafted Jadeveon Clowney, defensive end from South Carolina. It was a very disappointing year for Clowney, who was unable to be on the football field due to various injuries. The few times that we were able to see him certainly looked very explosive, looked like a guy who's able to make a ton of plays, especially behind the line of scrimmage. And so I'm quite sure we are all going to be very anxious to see Clowney on the football field this year. A guy who looks like if he has the work ethic and desire, he's going to be playing alongside Defensive Player of the Year J.J. Watt. You have an outstanding defensive coordinator like Romeo Crennel. If this guy really wants it, he could possibly move the Texans defense to the top of the food chain. Coming in at number 2, the St. Louis Rams selected Greg Robinson, offensive tackle from the University of Auburn. Great job by Robinson in his first year. The Rams, in order to make his transition a lot smoother, moved him inside to guard. It was great to see from day one he was able to hold his own in the trenches. Robinson, another guy who I honestly believe, if he has the work ethic and desire, one day will be a perennial Pro Bowler. Coming in at number 3, Jacksonville selected their franchise quarterback, Blake Bortles from the University of Central Florida. Love what I've seen out of Bortles this year. 100% agreed with Jacksonville's decision to put Bortles in early. Writing was on the wall. Jacksonville was a team that was not going to make the playoffs, so let him get in the game, get the in-game experience, get his feet wet. I think it's going to do wonders for this kid in the offseason. I think if Jacksonville can put the right pieces around him, primarily offensive line to protect him, continue to grow that young group of receivers that they brought in with them. Justin Blackmon possibly could be back in the fold. They may even go out and hit the free agent market, but Blake Bortles has all the physical tools. Another guy that without question, I think if he gets it done in the film room, puts the work in, he's going to be a very solid quarterback with star potential in this league one day. Coming in at number 4, Buffalo Bills selected Sammy Watkins, wide receiver from Clemson. Young guy did an excellent job this year. I certainly think that his production was kind of stymied to a certain degree because the Bills unable to run the football effectively on a consistent basis. Also, the quarterback situation there wasn't too strong. Kyle Orton, quarterback who was very inconsistent. And so Watkins certainly has all the individual tools to go on and be a great wide receiver in this league one day. I honestly believe if the Bills can address those areas, get a stronger running game, along with getting a quarterback in there who can get this guy to football, in my opinion, he's right in the mold of a Dez Bryant type talent. Coming in at number 5, the Oakland Raiders selected outside linebacker Khalil Mack from the University of Buffalo. Great job by Mack in his first season. Stats-wise, certainly the numbers may not jump off the page at you, but this is a guy who understands football. It's a lot of those intangibles and stats that don't show up in the stat sheet, I should say. Those plays that Mack was doing, things like setting the edge properly, getting pressure on the quarterback, being very effective in the running game, helping blow up plays in the backfield. This is a kid that I know for a fact is going to put the work in the offseason. The Oakland Raiders certainly have a very disruptive force to head up their front seven for years to come. So great job by Khalil Mack. Coming in at number 6, Atlanta Falcons addressed the big time need they had by drafting Jake Matthews, offensive tackle from Texas A&M. Great job by Matthews in his first year. He was on the football field every single week. You always like to see your young guys be able to stay healthy, especially in the trenches. We all know that the Atlanta Falcons in the past couple years, their offensive line has struggled mightily. Matthews actually had to take on a little bit more responsibility than initially expected when offensive tackle Sam Baker went down for the season in the preseason. And so Matthews being in this history and pedigree of the Matthews family, you know he's a guy who has the work ethic. I think that was a great job by Atlanta. Jake Matthews will be there to help protect Matt Ryan for years to come. Coming in at number 7, Tampa Bay Buccaneers selected Mike Evans, wide receiver from Texas A&M. This guy really came on the second half of the season to a certain degree. Like Sammy Watkins in Buffalo, Mike Evans' production kind of slowed down a little bit. Very inconsistent at quarterback there, as well as not having a running game. Nonetheless, this guy is a big-time talent. This was an excellent year to cash in on a wide receiver, as we'll see as we continue to move through these picks. But Mike Evans, a big guy at 6'5", ton of talent, nice hands, good route running. If this guy comes back even better next year, which I certainly anticipate, he's going to be a handful for defenses to deal with. Coming in at number 8, Justin Gilbert, defensive back from Oklahoma State. He was selected by the Cleveland Browns. Had a hard time learning on the job, but you certainly expect that from a defensive back. Hard to adjust to the rules in the NFL where you basically can't touch receivers and things of that nature, but great job. He's under the tutelage of Pro Bowl defensive back Joe Hayden, who's on the other side. I know that Hayden is going to make sure this guy really learns the game, and the thing that I did like to see about Gilbert, even though his play did not have him in the starting role, he certainly played a lot of nickel and dime in passing situations, and I think that's the type of flexibility you need from your defensive backs nowadays. Not only guys who can cover outside, but guys who can step inside and guard these slot receivers. And so Justin Gilbert certainly has a bright future for the Cleveland Browns. Coming in at number 9, absolutely love this pick by the Minnesota Vikings, selecting outside linebacker Anthony Barr from UCLA. Mike Zimmer, if you think what he was doing out with the Cincinnati Bengals, Vontaze Burfict, a couple years he was the defensive coordinator there. I think Anthony Barr is going to be certainly in that mode, a guy who can stop the run, high motor, can get after the quarterback, even showed that he can drop back in coverage or out in the flats when he needs to. Again, under head coach Mike Zimmer's direction, this guy is really going to flourish. Keep your eyes open for Anthony Barr. I think he's a star in the making out in Minnesota. Coming in at number 10, the Detroit Lions. This is really the first pick that's highly questionable, and I think that Detroit made a huge mistake here drafting Ebron, tight end from North Carolina. Look, the kid certainly has a lot of potential. I understand that Detroit has some tight ends there with Brandon Pettigrew, who's on the tail end of his career. Joseph Fourier, not quite sold on him. But when I think about the Detroit Lions, I think about a team that has neglected their offensive line. If you think about Detroit this year, unable to run the football consistently, certainly huge problems protecting Matt Stafford. And, I think when we look at a couple of these next couple picks coming up, I think offensive line is the direction that Detroit should have went in. Nonetheless, Ebron was the pick, battled injuries, had some drops. He's going to have to really pull it all together. I do believe he can do that, but I honestly believe Detroit really missed out on a couple top-tier offensive linemen who could have came in, been an immediate impact, and also really helped this offense, and particularly Matt Stafford, stay on his feet for years to come. One of those players I'm talking about is number 11, the Tennessee Titans selected Taylor Lewan, offensive tackle from the University of Michigan. Lewan is going to be coming in more than likely starting next year. Tennessee has a tackle who's been there for many years, doing a great job on that outside, getting up in age. So picking Lewan now, right move. Let him learn. Let him get the tutelage. He's a guy who is game ready, was able to get out on the football field. Very confident that Lewan is the real deal. Needs to continue to work on his footwork and get stronger, but this is very close to a polished product. Another guy who I don't think there's any question is going to have some Pro Bowls on his resume before his career is done. Coming in at number 12, New York Giants absolutely did a great job by scouting and going out and getting Odell Beckham Jr., electrifying wide receiver from LSU. We all know what this kid did as the Offensive Rookie of the Year in just 12 games, over 1,300 yards, 13 TD receptions, showed everything that you wanted to see, including one of the best catches ever, an overhead grab with basically 2 fingers and the thumb. This kid has it all. I think if he continues to work and to get better, based on what we've seen this year, barring any injuries, we could very well be looking at a player who's going to rank as one of the best of all time at his particular position. Coming in at number 13, excellent job by St. Louis. They're a team that understands that games are won and lost in the trenches, especially being out in that NFC West where you have teams who run a football. Marshawn Lynch out in Seattle. Frank Gore out for the 49ers. Andre Ellington for Arizona. The Rams got defensive tackle Aaron Donald for Pittsburgh. Ended up being the defensive rookie of the year. Had 9 sacks. You really seen that Rams defense start to crank it up and turn the corner once he was inserted into the starting lineup about halfway through the season. I think without question, if he and that Rams line, defensive line, can get better with Michael Brockers, with Chris Long, with Robert Quinn, this is a group who arguably can be considered the best defensive front four in the NFL coming into this upcoming season. Number 14, Chicago Bears certainly went out and addressed the need with defensive back Kyle Fuller from Virginia Tech. If you look at Chicago's secondary, in particular the defensive backs, Charles Peanut Tillman as well as Tim Jennings, both of those guys, savvy veterans who've been around for a long time. I think the pick was really timely because this year Tillman actually went down in the 3rd game of the season for the entire year. And so Fuller put on the football field. Again, the defensive back position, very difficult to make that transition when you think about the top tier talent that's at wide receiver right now in the NFL. Nonetheless, great job by Fuller. Pretty much able to stay healthy. I think more than anything, his overall production was kind of glued till a team that the bottom completely fell out the second half of the season. But he's a guy who's definitely going to be expected to take the starting reins sooner than later out in Chicago. Coming in at number 15, it was the Pittsburgh Steelers grabbing linebacker Ryan Shazier from Ohio State. Great pickup, battled some injuries, but was able to get through the entire season. Certainly showed his big playability, and particularly being able to drop back in the pass coverage in the preseason. I tell you one thing about the Pittsburgh Steelers, they certainly know how to go out and draft players who fit their mold. This is a guy who's certainly going to thrive playing next to Lawrence Timmons inside. The Steelers also went out and got James Harrison, a veteran who had been on that team, and so Shazier is a guy certainly fits that Pittsburgh Steeler mold, and I think he's going to be an outstanding linebacker for years to come. The other offensive lineman, when we were talking about the Detroit Lions dropping the ball at number 10, it was Zach Martin, offensive lineman from Notre Dame. Dallas Cowboys went out and drafted him at 16. Great job for Dallas. Martin really helped solidify the offensive line for Dallas. They had the leading rusher in the NFL this year, DeMarco Murray, over 1,800 yards rushing. Martin, certainly a young guy who's going to put the work in the offseason. I think without question, the Dallas Cowboys offensive line is going to be regarded the best in the NFL coming into this upcoming season. Martin, a huge reason that's the case. Number 17, great job, Baltimore Ravens, going out, getting inside linebacker C.J. Mosley from Alabama. This kid arguably could have been the defensive rookie of the year as well. Had over 100 tackles, really filled up the stat sheet. Forced fumbles, fumble recoveries, interceptions. What really impressed me was in this year's AFC divisional game, you see Mosley stepping out on an island, checking Rob Gronkowski one-on-one. Gronkowski did get the reception, but I think just the confidence that Mosley has in himself as well as his teammates, that he's able to now step out on an island and check a big-time tight end like that. This is a guy who I would assume, I'm certainly hoping, that he'll get up under the tutelage of future Hall of Famer Ray Lewis, who was an inside linebacker for Baltimore. Mosley, ton of talent. I think there's no question this kid is going to be one of the best linebackers in the NFL for a very, very long time. Coming in at number 18, the New York Jets selected safety Calvin Pryor from Louisville. Nice pickup there. I think he's a guy who certainly has got a lot of room to grow. Now you have a new defensive coordinator, a new head coach in Todd Bowles, who came over from Arizona. I think he's a guy who certainly has the defensive schemes in place that's really going to help Pryor to succeed. Pryor really just got attached to a bad situation. The Jets, one of the worst teams in the NFL all season long. Had a lot of pressure on him as well. The secondary is definitely an area that the Jets needed to address. Nonetheless, I think Pryor is a guy who's going to be a staple on the back end there. Coming in at number 19, the Miami Dolphins went out and selected offensive tackle Juwan James from Tennessee. Great job for Miami. I think this is another player that the Detroit Lions. We've went over three offensive linemen, Taylor Lewan, Zach Martin. Now we're talking about Juwan James, able to come in, start from day one for Miami. You see Miami's running game be very effective. They had some injuries to Mike Pouncey and Brandon Albert, but I think when all of those guys are healthy, the Miami Dolphins running game is going to be very successful anytime you can have a tackle come in and start from day one. Big positive for your football team. Number 20, New Orleans Saints went out and got Brandon Cooks, wide receiver from Oregon State. We know that Drew Brees and this offense loves to air it out, and they certainly needed some pieces. You figure last year they lost the likes of Lance Moore, Devery Henderson, as well as Darren Sproles, and so certainly getting some weapons in there for Drew Brees and Cooks, certainly in that Darren Sproles type mode, very diminutive, very fast and quick player, very explosive, was having a very good season, got hurt, missed the last 6 or 7 games of the season, but this kid has a ton of talent. Again, that wide open spread offense for Drew Brees and company, this kid Cooks is really going to be able to thrive. Coming in at number 1, excellent pick for the Green Bay Packers. I tell you, these guys really know how to get it done in the draft, going out and getting safety. Clinton Dix from the University of Alabama. Learned on the job this year, but started from day one as the season progressed. You've seen this kid getting better and better, all the way up until the point where he had 2 interceptions in the NFC Championship game on the road against Seattle. You know, these Alabama players understand the game of football. He's got a great group around him out in Green Bay, and I think without question he's going to be a big-time player for years to come on the back end out for the Green Bay Packers. Coming in at number 22, Cleveland Browns selected Johnny Manziel. If you're looking at how these draft picks have gone so far, everybody really cashed in and did a great job. Again, I think Detroit at number 10 slipped up. This obviously being the other pick where there was a huge risk involved. And in my opinion, when I seen this pick made, it was more of a pick of a kind of sympathy. Yeah, it was certainly a situation where Johnny Manziel has had such a huge celebrity and all this notoriety coming in. As he continued to slip down the draft board, I think the Cleveland Browns just said, you know, let's just give this kid a try, see what he's about. Did not work out at all. I think the things that we all seen out of Johnny Manziel that had him sliding at the time, in which he honestly should have slid further, came to light. Was unable to win the starting job in the preseason, had every opportunity to do that over Brian Hoyer, and then after being on the sideline for weeks, once he did finally get in, all of his true flaws and weaknesses were certainly on display. He's not that tall, so had trouble throwing from the pocket. Doesn't have the greatest arm strength. Certainly doesn't have the accuracy to throw from the pocket right now. And once he gets outside of the pocket, certainly doesn't have the foot speed to outrun these NFL players. And so, like any rookie in the NFL, especially at the quarterback position, I'm not counting the kid out yet. If he puts the work in, he's dedicated. He certainly can make strides to get better, but he's got an uphill battle. Recently checked into rehab, and so I think the Cleveland Browns organization have a big time decision to make. Invested a first round pick in this kid. It was on the low end of the first round, but Johnny Manziel, certainly a player right now who nobody is sold on. Coming in at number 23, Kansas City Chiefs selected defensive end D Ford from Auburn. I think he's going to fit in perfectly there. You figure he's got some guys like Tamba Ali and possibly Justin Houston if he comes back, is re-signed and doesn't go away due to free agency. I think that was a big reason they went out and got Ford, though, knowing that Houston possibly could go to another team in free agency. And also you think about Mike DeVito, the defensive end that they have there now, got hurt the first game of the season, missed the entire year. So Ford was a timely pick. DeVito, older player as well. So I think D Ford is a guy you want to watch out for. More than likely he's going to be in the starting lineup next year for Kansas City. Coming in at number 24 for the Cincinnati Bengals, they picked up defensive back Darqueze Dennard from Michigan State. Was arguably the best defensive back in this year's NFL draft. Obviously, the other guy who went before him, Justin Gilbert, up to the Cleveland Browns. But Dennard, ton of talent. I think he's got a great group of guys that he's working behind now. Without question, veterans Leon Hall, Terrence Newman, certainly getting up in age. Drake Kilpatrick is another defensive back who's been there for some years. You know that Marvin Lewis is a defensive-minded coach, so I think Darqueze Dennard is a guy that we're going to see get some playing time this upcoming year. Marvin Jones raved about this kid in the preseason, and as I mentioned, kind of like the situation in Chicago, those defensive backs definitely getting long in the tooth. Darqueze Dennard is a guy that I'm going to be looking out for in years to come. San Diego Chargers went out and got defensive back Jason Verrett from TCU. Young guy was forced in the action much sooner than anticipated, as San Diego's secondary, and particularly at the defensive back position, went through a lot of injuries. Did a decent job. Again, defensive back, not an easy position to play. The verdict is really still out on this kid. I think he showed a lot of talent. It's about work ethic. It's about getting it done in the off season. We'll see how it goes for Jason Verrett. San Diego Chargers certainly need to tighten up their secondary. Number 26, the Philadelphia Eagles went out and got Marcus Smith, outside linebacker from Louisville. Young guy really didn't get a lot of playing time with the exception of special teams, and so we'll wait to see how he fits into the bigger picture there. Arizona Cardinals at number 27, great job going out, getting safety. Deion Buchanan from Washington State. This guy started from day one, really understood Todd Bowles and what he was trying to get done on that defense, and so I think Deion Buchanan is going to be a very solid player. When you have defensive backs like Antonio Cromartie and Patrick Peterson in tight coverage on the outside, certainly makes your job a lot easier. The other thing I like about Buchanan, not just the cover skills, can actually come up and lower the boom on offensive players. Number 28, Carolina Panthers really cashed in, grabbing big-time wide receiver Calvin Benjamin from Florida State. This guy came in, immediate impact, up over 1,000 yards, 9 TD passes. I think when you think about Mike Evans and Sammy Watkins, the wide receivers we talked about earlier who were drafted before him, very similar situation, shaky quarterback play, inconsistent running game, certainly held this young man's potential numbers back a bit, but that 6'5", 240 pounds, what a physical specimen this kid is, can go up and get the football at his highest point, make the spectacular catches, big time presence in the red zone. I think if this kid continues to get better, he is certainly going to be a big time talent out in Carolina for a very long time. Coming in at number 29, New England Patriots, great job going out and getting defensive tackle Dominic Easley from Florida. If you think about Vince Wilfork, he maybe has a year or two left out in New England, a guy who's been holding it down, being an anchor in those trenches for so long. So good for Easley to come in, get up under Wilfork, really learn the game from one of the game's best defensive tackles of all time, a guy who's been a Pro Bowler for many, many years. You know that New England picks up high IQ guys for the most part, and guys who can fit into that system. Obviously, with New England winning the Super Bowl this year, the young kid Easley has a taste of a winning culture very, very early in his career. At number 30, San Francisco 49ers going out, grabbing safety Jimmy Ward from Northern Illinois, another guy who we really didn't get to see his full potential because he battled through injuries, missed the second half of the season, but the first half of the season, the flexibility that we've seen out of this kid at the scouting combine on display. Yes, he plays safety, but has the ability to come up and play outside defensive back or hop inside and cover slots. That's the type of diversity that you like to see. You also think about the 49ers picking up Antoine Bethea from the Colts. He's only got a couple years left. I like Ward along the backside there with the second-year player now, Eric Reed from LSU. I think those two guys can make a very formidable and impactful safety tandem out for San Francisco. Number 31, Denver Broncos went out and got Bradley Roby, defensive back from Ohio State. Love the pickup there. If you have a guy who was able to come in, learn on the job because Denver was ahead in so many ball games. I also like the nucleus of players they had surrounding them. You're talking about veterans like Chris Harris, veterans like Aqib Talib, TJ Ward. So he certainly had a lot of guys back there to kind of help nurture him, move him along. He wasn't pressured to coming in and being a guy from day one, but you did see him on the football field taking his lumps, but learning on the job. Bradley Roby, a player who I think is going to be very effective for Denver for years to come. Rounding out the first round, Minnesota Vikings selecting their franchise quarterback, Teddy Bridgewater, quarterback from Louisville. End up getting in there and really did a great job in the preseason battling Matt Castle for that starting quarterback position. Very well could have started. Minnesota went with Castle, who ended up getting hurt very early in the season. Once Bridgewater took over the reins, you could see he's a player that had the physical tools, that had him mentioned as the number one pick coming out of from last year's class. Even though he slid down to 32, I think it's a very good situation. They've got a lot of young talent on both sides of the football for Minnesota. Bridgewater, you can see his talent on display. A guy who with every game certainly got better and better, even if the stats did not say so. I don't think there's any question that Teddy Bridgewater, especially if Minnesota can get Adrian Peterson back in that backfield and get that running game going, Teddy Bridgewater is certainly set up for a long-term success. that is going to wrap up our 2014 draft review. That was round one. As you can see, most players were able to come in and make an immediate impact. Certainly for the most part, you're figuring a high majority, with the exception of a few guys on this list. Very excited to see them on the football field next year. It's the NFL Exporter. We'll be right back.